So please fire hat the next scenario and let's get that one going.
Right.
So Papelot, just like Hougoumont, the previous one, is another defensive or fortified position where we have some Dutch troops defending, and it's up to you to take command of a brigade and clear it out. You might get some reinforcements coming from your left, and there's some cavalry stationed on your right that might want to get involved. But you have no control over them, so you're gonna have to cooperate with them as much as you can while focusing on your own troops.
Okay. So we've got our courier coming in with
the initial
our
orders.
So begin our attack on the Allied left, clear the enemy from all the buildings and concealments to your front. Once secured, hold the farmhouse complex and await further orders.
Matt, can you bring up the map briefly to show people what part of the scenario we're fighting at? So we see Chateau de Goumont, or Hougoumont, as it's also called, to the left here, and that's where the previous battle took place.
Yep.
Now we are fighting at Papelot, which is more to the right, and so we're on the different flank here of the battle. And this was taking part, this battle, slightly later than the previous one, about half an hour. So we're trying to match the exact time it was happening historically to how it's happening over here.
Yeah.
Alright, so please go ahead and set your initial strategies.
What I'd want to do is move all of the troops in my command forward.
It's always the way to go, forward.
It's always the way to go. So we'll move these just in front of the cannons, who are now firing on the buildings. And what we can see, this is our cavalry reinforcements on our right side, and they're being presented by troops over there. So what I want to do is move these units in front of them to force them to get into a line, so that they're not in a square formation, which will then block the horses and the cavalry from being able to charge forward and reduce their numbers. And we can see on our left they are also moving up
right,
towards...
but I can see some more some enemy reinforcements moving up as well, so just something that can start out as a very small or minor skirmish can quickly grow bigger as more sides bring in their reinforcements and set up their artillery batteries, bring in their cavalry, etc.
Yep. Just going to remind myself where these are going and adjust according.
It must be nearly time up now for the assault on Hougoumont.
Yep, it was a major victory on that sand.
A victory for the French. A very good start for Napoleon.
Vive l'Empereur!
So we're attacking Papelot now.
Oh, we're already into the second scenario.
Exactly.
I'm way behind.
And Matt's just moving up his forces, so it just started. We can see enemy troops gathering around the area.
So where on the battlefield is Papelot, just to give us some context?
Papelot is on the far east of the current positions.
The right of the French line.
At the right of the French line, the extreme right of the French line. It's also the direction from which the Prussians will come. So it's vital that the French take this. Now they're coming down a steep slope into the town. There is actually a little bridge on the road. You can see between the two buildings. Sadly, it has been depicted. And the weapons the infantry of this period had were uniquely unsuited to any kind of close-in building-to-building fighting. They had no hand grenades, although they existed in previous wars. They didn't use them in musket. The musket stands about 4'6" high. And
It's not something you can aim easily in a confined
no,
space.
and if you put a bayonet on, which is what we want to have, because once you fired your shot, you then effectively extremely vulnerable to somebody else. You've got your bayonet on the end of the musket. That takes the height of the bayonet to over 6 feet high. And trying to use that in a house, and the houses in this period had extremely small rooms. We're used to rooms. Imagine your sitting room. If your sitting room was just 10 foot square, that's the size of room you'd have in an average ordinary person's house.
Not much different to the room, this room here we're broadcasting from. I wouldn't like to do hand-to-hand fighting with a 6 foot long musket.
Well, it would be perhaps a bit smaller because it might include something like the staircase to going upstairs. They really are tiny. There are some still existing around fortresses in Holland where they've been restored. And it's fascinating to see how ordinary people lived at that time.
I guess one thing to bear in mind is that on average people were shorter then. People are much taller now. You can tell every time you go into an old house you tend to bang your head on something.
Yes. They were shorter, and the poor diet made some of them extraordinarily weedy in later life. There's a jacket existing in the museum at Malmaison near Paris of a French brigadier, and frankly you would struggle to get a 12-year-old boy into it. It really is incredible how tiny some of these people were. But the stature of a man should not be measured in his size, but in the capacity of his heart. I should use that in a book one day.
So we've just got the French advancing down the slope now. Who are they facing here?
This part of the Allied battlefield was garrisoned by Nassau's, which is a town in the Netherlands, which was an independent state at this time. And you can see them in the green uniform with the yellow flag with the dot in the middle.
And would there have been a noticeable difference in the quality of troops from different nationalities?
Not necessarily the quality. All sides recruited people who were untrained and trained them up. Even the British had trouble with raw troops encountering the enemy who were more experienced. There was a particular incident at Fuengirola in the south of Spain when the British landed a battalion of raw infantry. The French marched out from one of their little fortresses, and unfortunately the British were led by a colonel on horseback who was extremely short-sighted. And when this other body of troops arrived, he didn't know what side they were, because they happened to be wearing brown jackets, because they were actually Italians. And the British received one volley from very close range and ran away up the coast. They were only saved by the Royal Navy sailing a frigate in close to the shore and blasting a broadside from all its guns at the pursuing Italian troops.
It's an interesting problem that it's very hard to recreate in a computer game, because generally you know whose troops are yours and whose troops are the enemy, because you can give orders to your troops. So a real battle would have been a very confusing situation, partly because of limited visibility and partly for factors like you say, you see some troops and you're not even sure if they're on your side or the enemy's side.
That's right. For some time the Prussian were visible, but beyond about 1,000 yards you can't discern more than just the outline.
So there would have been some doubt as to whether they were the French or the Prussians arriving at the start.
Absolutely, and Napoleon sent a message saying it was to his army, to all the units in his army, saying Grouchy has arrived, one more final effort and we'll beat these scurvy. We've got cavalry coming, this is exciting.
We've got a cavalry charge going in here, Matthew.
So what I've done is I've formed a line in front of them, forcing the enemy to actually take the same position, and of course we've got the cavalry behind us just.
What's happened there? Are they retreating or are they routing?
They're routing. There's only one thing you can do against a cavalry charge. Well, there's more than one thing. You can throw yourself on the ground and hope that the horse doesn't stand on you and the man doesn't have a sword long enough to hit you if you're lying flat on the floor. The other thing you can do, and it's the more natural reaction, is to run for your life. And troops running at this period would throw, and any period, if you're routing, you're in fear of being completely killed, injured or killed,
Partially killed.
you throw away everything. So you can run past it, throw away your musket,
You've
throw
got that
away your
famous
shaker.
motto from the Spartans, haven't you? Return with your shield or on it.
Exactly.
Because the first thing that anyone would throw away when they were running was their shield.
Yes.
So it's not something new to Napoleonic warfare. It's a,
No,
it's a
no,
human
it's
instinct.
it's part of human condition. It's the fight or flight thing. And when you're faced with, it's difficult to imagine what it's like standing in front of a cavalry charge. If you were to step out in front of one of the fences at the Grand National, when the horses are, maybe the first fence, when the horses are still bunched up together, and stand there, I mean, it's not conscionable, is it?
I once
You
went
couldn't
to a live action role playing event where a group of 10 opponents got together and launched a charge at our group of about 5 or 6, and the instant reaction for everyone was just to run away. No one even thought about fighting, everyone just ran. And imagine that, where you're against, in a situation where it's life or death, someone's on a horse with a weapon.
No, absolutely.
It's just hard to imagine.
I once did, my first encounter with reenacting was a trip to Switzerland, and the group I was with was the Vantonian, the 21st, and part of the itinerary was to join in the town fete and parade at a place called Martigny near the Italian border. In front of us was an Italian band. They marched along the street and we were behind them in a column 3 wide and about 15 deep. They turned up a side road and went up the hill. We turned up a side road. We, instead of staying in column, we formed line and levelled our bayonets at them and came on in a very determined, grim way. And truly, the Italian band routed and disappeared in order.
It is just a natural. You really have to train people extensively to override that natural reaction.
Yes, it is training and experience. The French practice was to recruit soldiers and train them on the march, but they didn't just train them in military manoeuvres and firing muskets and so on. The corporals in the French army were instructed to teach those who couldn't how to read and write. It was part of the corporal's duties to do that, which meant that because the French army was a meritocracy, it meant that the best would rise to the top.
So the officers in the French army were generally more capable than the officers in the other armies.
Absolutely, absolutely. You didn't have any of this paying some
Man
man in an
may
office.
well know that. So because you start the British army, you had to buy your rank, didn't you,
Yeah.
to get promoted.
And it was expensive, and to
It's a way
maintain
of preventing the riffraff from getting promoted.
Yeah, it was a construction designed to do exactly that, to keep the ordinary people out of the higher echelons of command. So you could rise to sergeant if you were an ordinary person, but if you expected to rise even to lieutenant, you then had to pay money to buy the post, and the pay that you got was never enough to maintain the uniform and the necessaries required.
You needed
for the
another
post
form of
position.
income.
Exactly. So it was a way of reserving that occupation for the landed gentry.
And as a result, you end up with people in command that have no natural ability for it. That's just
No natural ability, no experience other than hunting a fox, and no formal training as an officer.
No, it's clearly a
We-
less effective way to lead soldiers.
We won this by the professionalism of our navy, which wasn't professional by this time, and by the guts and determination of the ordinary soldiers.
So what's happening here now, Matthew? You've pushed them back. You're now.
Yeah, I've pushed
Come
that
back.
unit. It is now actually formed in the
They've
square.
rallied and formed square,
They formed square, and the cavalry are just keeping them.
keeping them out of the way.
Yeah.
This is classic Napoleonic tactics. The cavalry arrive, they force the infantry to form square. What would be ideal now is if you could bring up some artillery, because a square is a very vulnerable target to artillery.
Yeah, I
The
suppose,
artillery blast them away, and then you send in a bayonet charge and they will run.
Right.
Just like that. It's so easy when you know how to do it.
What I'm trying to do here is just continue to push forward.
Just going to move the microphone a bit closer this way if you can, because it's not picking up Ian too well. think Ian's lost his voice a little bit this morning, so
I use it too much.
people say you talk too much. Some people say he drinks too much.
I'll just have another one then.
Thank you. This is apple juice, by the way. Nothing stronger at the moment.
That's what they think.
Yeah, Matthew's relatively new to Scourge of War. He's not played that many games, so he may be showing what it would like to be more of a British commander than a French commander, to be honest.
Perhaps he needs training.
I quite like the position here. It seems to be outflanking this Nassau regiment. They seem to be
Yep.
taking heavy casualties there.
This is a good move. It's another excellent piece of positioning. If you can get your troops at a right angle to the enemy's line, you can enfilade it, which means that the missiles that you throw at him can plough down the line. It's a much more effective use of musketry than fire as well.
And I guess it also means that there's very little they can do back to you as well.
Well, exactly, yes. But getting your troops into that position is really tricky.
What I don't want to do here is to move forward and the cavalry not to be protected from.
Yeah, so if those guys come on your flank, you need the cavalry to keep that, keep them at bay.
Yes, you seem to have got them pretty well pinned. So this line we're looking at, which is half in the sunken road, or I think it's a stream actually.
That's a stream.
Yes, that's a stream. If they came forward with the cavalry on their flank, I think they would be reasonably secure. Were the cavalry to disappear, then they would be vulnerable to being enfiladed by the Nassau's currently on their flank. Except you seem to be tactical withdrawal?
Wandering
about.
Yes.
Right, okay.
That's my inexperience. But we're going moving forward.
Yeah, push them forward. I think we see the Nassau streaming away at the back of Papua. I think the time was ready to go and we're stuck in. Alternatively, if you've got a lot of cavalry, you launch the cavalry through the village to slaughter the people going up the other side.
Right, okay. Well, unfortunately I can't control these. So they are.
Well, that's a shame because that would have been a really good move.
Yes.
Let's see if we can get some infantry into Papua then, and you'll have taken it, and that will be the second success for the French.
Continue to move forward.
They look a bit understrength, that unit. How about this is on the right of the screen? And they're looking a bit battered as well. Send one or both of them into the village.
And through here.
Yes, because it looks as though there's nobody there. They've all run out the other side. But if you watch, I think they're sending reinforcements down, so you need to get into those buildings quickly before the reinforcements come to kick you back out again. If you look at the top of the screen, the Nassau's changing formation, and they're beginning to threaten a unit of line infantry over on the left there. It might be an idea to square them up to the direction, to that hedge line. That's it, that's a good one. And now advance, because we can see more Nassau's evacuating the village.
actually been vacated.
Yes. Let's go for it.
There's no flag.
So we want a coup de grace on Papillote from the French.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's good. That's a good firing line.
Just trying to get the microphone into a slightly more convenient position for Ian.
This is getting quite exciting. I'm enjoying this.
Moving forwards.
Are you about to do an assault on this, or?
Well, I think we've forced the Nassauers out. They seem to have been running away up the hill.
So you pretty much captured this.
Yes, but you can see at the top of the screen now that the Nassauers are trying to. They've rallied and they're trying to come back at us. What we want to do now is to push French troops along this road on the right of the screen to outflank the Nassauer line, as well as taking the farmhouse on the right.
What we're going to do now is we're going to go and see where we're going on Build Glory Napoleonics and the tabletop.
Yep.
So we're just going to move next door.
We're now back in the tabletop. We're with Kerry, and he's going to give us an update on the situation, Napoleonics recreation.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Well, at the moment, the French are attacking Hougoumont. Their initial attack has been repulsed by the British. The French are bringing up more reserves and throwing in a whole division against Hougoumont in an attempt to attack it and take it before the main attack in the centre goes ahead.
So that's not going so well for the French. The French managed to get a major victory in their assault on Hougoumont on Scourge of Waterloo. So Napoleon, you've got something to keep up with, Napoleon.
Quite impressed. Yeah, the British are fighting quite resiliently at the moment. The French are still bringing up their reserves. They've decided they need twice as many men. They only outnumber the British by about 2.5 to 1 at the moment.
Yeah, 4 to 1 sounds like better odds.
Yeah.
And over on the other side, we've seen the attack on Papillote go in Scourge of Waterloo. So it looks like something similar is happening over here.
Yeah, the French are currently just assaulting.
It's going to move the camera in a bit closer so we can see Papillote. So
Yeah.
Papillote's on the east of the battlefield, the right of the French line.
Yeah, Papillote's held by the Nassauers, and the French are currently have just assaulted the buildings, and we're waiting to see what happens when the dice get rolled, basically. So,
Okay. Is that
don't-
something we can do now, or is that can we find out the
we-
result of the battle?
We certainly can. Did the attack successfully go in? Yeah. Okay.
So what happened was the French have assaulted, and there's a chance for the Nassauers to shoot as they assault, and then the French have to basically check their morale to see if they can push home the attack and move into melee, and they succeeded with that, and now we're going to actually fight the melee.
We are. So both sides get to roll dice.
So there's various factors that feed into the combats here. So the Nassau's are in a fortified position, so they get significant benefits for that. But they are outnumbered, and I don't know about the quality. Are the French troops as good, better?
So, they're slightly better than the Nassau's, certainly. So I expect
So
the French to push
who's
the
got the
Nassau's out of
advantage?
it.
Okay, so the French have got an
French
advantage
have it
here.
in numbers, but
So the way it works is they roll the dice and work out how many hits they get, and it looks like the Nassau's have
yeah,
hit
the
once, and the French...
the Nassau's are still hanging on, but they're disordered. So the French are still in combat and still fighting over the buildings.
So the French won, but not by enough to push the Nassau's out.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that combat will continue into the next round.
Yes. Yes. So there'll be another 20-minute move for the French to have another attempt at attacking the Nassau's.
What are the British options here? Do they just have to let the Nassau's get pushed out, or is there an opportunity to reinforce, or is it better for them to stay on their
the
hill?
British can reinforce, but the nearest troops are behind the hill to the rear of Papalot. And for them to get there, they won't have time to get there for the next round of combat, but they could if they wanted to reinforce it within 2 moves.
It feels a little bit like the Nassau's have been hung out to dry here.
They are in a bit in advance of the main British line, sadly for them.
Great, thanks very much. Are they ready for us to head back over to the digital game? So the rest of the line still seems pretty static at the moment.
Yeah, the Grand Battery is still pounding away at the British lines on the hill. They were attempting to retire.
So the British, are they still on the hill or
things
behind
got
the hill?
really
now?
exciting
They're
here.
just about on the hill. They're just holding back. Another move with any luck, and they'll be behind the hill and be out of range. Sorry that they fell back behind the hill and lay down, minimise the damage done by the French artillery.
And compared to the real timeline, are we kind of on schedule with the way things were developing on the real battle?
Yeah, there's about probably another hour to go before the main infantry attack goes in.
Okay.
So there'll be more time to resolve Huguenot what's going to happen.
So there's a lot more still to come.
Certainly is.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll head back over to Scourge War Digital.
Thank you.
Right, things have got really exciting here at Papalot. The Nassau troops have been forced out. They've rallied and being continually under pressure from the French. Wellington's had to draw off reserves, which you can see at the top centre to left of the screen. Wellington's had to draw troops from his main line. This is really working in Napoleon's favour. Napoleon wanted to weaken the centre of the Allied line by drawing off reserves down to Hougoumont, and they were drawing them off down to Papalot. That's weakening the line so that when the big attack goes through on the centre, the Allied centre, it's got a much better chance of success. But it's still very much in the balance. The French, you can see bottom right, are just manoeuvring to push the Nassau's back even further. And the British over on our far left on the screen are attempting to outflank the French line. This is remarkable actually on several counts. I've stood on the side of the hillside and watched a French reenacting army and watched British troops manoeuvre, and it looks just like it does on the screen that you can see in front of you. But of course, we're not going to get shot at, and we're not even going to get cavalry trying to ride us down, which is what happens sometimes in reenactments. So that's grand. Now, centre of the screen, you've got the two buildings representing Papalot, and Nassau line, which has just started to retire because it realises that it's been outflanked by the unit at the French unit at the bottom of the screen, and they're performing an unusual manoeuvre, which I think is going to turn the unit 180 degrees round. Yes, that's what it's doing. There was a principle that the company on the left-hand side of the line should be on the left-hand side of the line, whichever way the unit was facing. So you get peculiar movements like this, peculiar formation changes like this. But now clearly they've managed to pull back to a position they're happy with. There's a square just there, still being pinned by the cavalry. I wonder whether bringing some cavalry up through the village road would be possible. Oh yes, I think we've got some, haven't we? We've got some cavalry on the road there. We have indeed. Now, if I were the Nassau commander, I'd be thinking very seriously about applying for my pension. Oh, French.
Sorry, that's what you do now.
French are wilting on the left of this particular part of the battlefield. Oh, we've got some reforming there. That's it. Get back into line. So Wellington's brought a lot of troops down there from the centre.
Huge amount.
It is, yes. It shows how concerned he is about this part of the battlefield.
I've been away for a bit, so are we still looking at Papillote or have we moved on?
This is still looking at Papillote. The French have effectively taken Papillote. You can see the flags on the buildings. And the British have brought down, Wellington's brought down huge numbers of reinforcements from his centre to try and retake the village. At the moment they seem to be concentrating on dealing with French troops outside the village, and we, the French, in the meantime are giving the...
Ah, Matt's done it again.
Major
Excellent.
victory.
So this
Excellent.
part of the battle is a major victory for the French.